Next up is a talk on bridging your service mesh in AWS. Before we start, I'd like to thank our sponsors, especially Cloudl. Cloudl effortlessly secures all your cloud accounts by automating visibility, detection of misconfigurations, and by providing security response. Automate your cloud security with Cloudl, keep attackers out, and focus on the quick growth of your business. For those in the room, we'll be taking questions after the talk. For those online, we'll be looking in Slack. Please welcome Santosh.
Thanks, Aaron. Hi, everyone. My name is Santosh. I'm on the cloud security team at Square. I was supposed to give this talk with my colleague Hari, but unfortunately he couldn't make it out to Salt Lake City this year. This talk is going to be about work we did recently to bridge our internal service mesh and AWS APIs. Square has a pretty extensive presence across multiple cloud providers. We're on AWS, we're on GCP as well, but we also have a pretty substantial physical data center presence. Internally, our stack is made up of a bunch of services that we call apps or applications. We're just going to focus on AWS for the rest of this talk. Within AWS, each of these apps gets its own account, and there are strong isolation guarantees between these accounts. So the idea is that from a least privilege standpoint, you own one of these accounts, and the worst thing that could happen is your account gets compromised. There is a shared VPC in each region so that the services can talk to each other, and there's a direct connect backhaul to the data center. So how do services talk to each other? We have an Envoy-based service mesh. Apps are composed of containers, and there's an Envoy sidecar sitting next to them. So when apps talk to each other, Envoy handles mutual TLS, and at the recipient end, Envoy handles auth and auth. So if your app be here, then connections come into the Envoy sidecar first, and then Envoy authenticates the caller app A, and then Envoy checks, hey, is app A allowed to call me, before the connection is allowed through to your application's business logic. The neat thing to know here is from the app's perspective, you don't have to worry about TLS stacks, you don't have to worry about your own auth and auth. You're just reading and writing in the clear from a local Unix domain socket. Access for humans works very similarly. We have a reverse proxy that sits in front of everything that we call Trogdor. Square employees auth through Trogdor to the services that they're trying to talk to. Trogdor handles SSO, and it also checks that the employee is coming from a trusted, up-to-date device. So if you haven't patched recently, we have the ability to say, no, you have to go update your machine, or you just don't get access to a bunch of internal sensitive services. Again, the neat thing from an app developer standpoint is because Trogdor uses the same Envoy-based service mesh to talk to backend apps, you just have to implement your route once, and both other apps and humans can hit it the exact same way. So all of this works great, and everyone knows how to use it, if your apps are nicely containerized and you have this nice Envoy sidecar sitting next to you. But life in the cloud is harder. Apps are more than just containers. Some stuff might live in Lambda functions. You might have static assets on S3, and you might want to use other services like Elasticsearch now, OpenSearch on AWS. An early design dream that we had was it would be really cool if all of these app components could talk to each other, however they were implemented. So if Lambda functions could call other apps, or if other apps could access your static assets on S3, and wherever the callers are, other places in AWS, in the DC, or elsewhere. But before I talk about how we got there, there was some prior work that had already happened. It was clear pretty early on that there was a lot of demand internally for offloading background async jobs onto Lambda functions. Towards this, we did a bunch of work to build secrets distribution, identity infrastructure, to let our Lambda functions call into the service mesh. There are a lot of interesting details in just this part. And if you'd like to learn more, go check out this awesome talk that my colleague Michael gave at Black Hat this year. But a natural follow-up question is, this is for outbound connections from Lambda into the service mesh. What happens if you want to go in the other direction? So in this example, app B has a Lambda function that's a logical component of the app, and we'd like pure apps, app A, to be able to call the Lambda function. A natural approach here would be, well, let's give app A IAM credentials, and then in the SDK for the language that app A is written in, you can just invoke the function. One problem you'll run into if you're doing that is that the Lambda execution context does not tell you who's calling. So it's not available from inside the code that the Lambda is running, the identity of the caller. So the implication of that is you can't do OTC from just the Lambda function. You could, of course, roll your custom scheme. An obvious idea that comes to mind is to have the caller pass in like a pre-signed STS get caller identity URL. This is an extremely common approach, but it's prone to bugs if you're not very careful. Many of you might remember the Project Zero bug that against Vault last year. The other problem is that it's hard to deploy because every client in your ecosystem would have to be updated. And finally, this would be a bespoke solution that just works for Lambda functions. The next thing you might try is putting a trusted proxy in front of your Lambda, like API Gateway. So API Gateway here authenticates the caller, and then when it invokes the Lambda on the backend, it tells the Lambda who's calling. So we've solved our OTC problem, but we've introduced a couple of others. So if you're on a VPC internal API gateway, that is if it's not public, or if it's not a regional or an edge gateway, you don't have mutual TLS support. Also for API gateways, it does not natively verify SPIFFE certs, which our service mesh is using everywhere. Again, as before, we could build something custom with Lambda authorizers. We could pass in JWTs and validate them ourselves. But we'd really be creating a parallel auth mechanism on top of, separate to the MTLS mesh we have everywhere else. And we didn't really want to do that. Ideally, you implement your auth stack well once, and then you use the same thing everywhere. Another problem that we were thinking about that seemed separate at the time was making files in an S3 bucket, hosting a static internal site, and making it available to other Square employees. There were a bunch of use cases here: internal release calendars, other tools, reports that employees had to create that they wanted other people to be able to access, but just within the company. S3 has this support natively, but it involves making the objects public to everyone. So if you want some sort of auth layer in front of that, this is surprisingly non-trivial to implement on AWS. So it occurred to us that we might be able to solve both of these problems in one shot. The idea is to have an Envoy sidecar, exactly like we do in the service mesh, but to use the sidecar to proxy traffic to AWS APIs instead. So instead of talking to a local app container, Envoy in this case is passing them along to S3 or to Lambda functions or to other AWS backends. So exactly like a sidecar in the application case, except the backend, instead of being a local container, is just AWS APIs directly. How do these connections work on the wire? So here's an example. The caller is making a request for the path /foo against some other app P that it's talking to. On the backend, Envoy is forwarding this request to the S3 bucket that it's configured to front. We call these Envoy instances ingress envoys. So in this case, the bucket that it's configured for is called my bucket, and then it adds an authorization header, effectively turning the incoming HTTP service-to-service request into an AWS API call. The key detail here is from the perspective of the caller. It doesn't even need to know or care that the backend is an S3 bucket. It's making a regular service-to-service request. So Envoy has support for calculating the authorization header given HTTP headers. This was implemented by the AWS App Mesh team a couple of years ago. It's super simple to set up. All you have to do is add those 4 lines of config, tell it a service name and the region that you're proxying for. This signing logic was turned into an extension by folks at Pinterest in early 2020. So how do you give Envoy credentials? Unfortunately, it's not using the CPP SDKs. Envoy is implemented in C++. Instead, it's a simple hard-coded implementation that checks if the AWS secret access key and access key ID environment variables are set. If they're set, it just uses them. Otherwise, it tries to poke at EC2, ECS metadata service endpoints and fetch credentials from there instead. In our infrastructure, it made the most sense to run these ingress envoys on our Kubernetes platform, which is built on EKS. So If you're on EKS, there's a great mechanism to give your containers credentials. You can bind IAM roles to pods, and then the pods can sort of exchange an OIDC token on disk for AWS credits. This mechanism is called URSA, or IAM roles for service accounts. URSA support is available in recent SDKs, but again, because we're not using the SDK, there was no support to fetch these credits over URSA in Envoy. Or was there? So it turned out when I was playing around with AWS app meshes, Envoy image, it supported URSA just fine. It was able to use my OIDC token and get credentials. The second line that you can see in the logs there is Envoy talking to the STS API endpoint and fetching IAM credits. So this support for this has been around since 2019. Unfortunately, the changes hadn't been upstreamed back to mainline Envoy yet. So we knew it was possible. We just had to build it. Unfortunately, we had to build it in C++. But as you'll see in a moment, we're really gluing together a bunch of components that existed already. All the hard work had been done, and the new lines of code that we were adding were small enough that we felt comfortable we could do this correctly. So how does the whole extension work? When a new request comes in, Envoy checks if it has valid cached credentials available. If it has creds, then it just signs and passes the request along to the configured backend. Otherwise, it finds the OIDC token on disk, calls the STS assume role with web identity API call, gets credentials back, and then signs the request. There is a cache that keeps track of expiry, and Envoy, the extension handles refreshing the credentials when needed. As before, we're using all the existing SigV4 signing logic in Envoy. We're using existing HTTP client interfaces. And so all we're doing is really writing a bunch of glue. Configuring this new extension is very similar to the one that I showed you before. There are only a couple of new fields. There is a role ARN, which is how we tell Envoy which IAM role in the account we wanted to assume. And because on the front end, calls are just being made over our service mesh, we have to specify a host name as well. We only offer S3 and API gateway internally, but those services are not hard-coded anywhere in the extension. So users can point us at pretty much any AWS API that they'd like to. So what makes this safe? Each backend, each API gateway or S3 bucket that we're proxying for gets its own Ingress Envoy instance and associated IAM role. That role is scoped to just the permissions that you need to talk to that specific backend. These Ingress Envoys run in the scope of the destination app. So there is no central all-powerful proxy, no single thing that you could compromise to get access to all of these resources. It's also critical that mutual TLS, auth-n and auth-z happens first. You might notice that the Ingress Envoy here is essentially a signing oracle, but it is only exposed to authorized scholars. Finally, it is possible to use different session names for different callers. That would give you attribution in your CloudTrail logs, but this comes at the cost of credential caching efficiency because you'd need fresh creds for each caller. So we knew that we had it working end-to-end, but it was also really important to us to make the experience of fronting your resources this way as amazing as possible for our users, and that took almost as much work. We wrote a bunch of Terraform modules to create IAM roles for Envoy with the right permissions, to set up API gateways to front Lambda functions. We made an interactive script that prompts for all the inputs we'd need from our users, and it set up the Envoy pods for them correctly. Finally, we also made a setup page that walks users through the steps they need. The bit that I think is really cool is the setup page itself is just some static files in an S3 bucket, and the setup page is also hosted on this infra. So we went GA in late July. We've onboarded 20 plus apps since, and the count keeps growing. It's being used for admin UIs for app operators, dynamically generated HTML reports, documentation, wikis, even stand-up Slack bots. And we're also able to do this really economically. Each Ingress Envoy costs about 60 cents a day. So there's very minimal ongoing cost for running these things. We are also by no means done. We're working on introducing support for route-based ACLs for the apps that expect those controls. In the future, we'll be able to add per route config support for the Envoy extension, so multiple backends can share Ingress Envoys, reducing the cost even further. And finally, we have pretty low volume use cases at the moment. So another future work item is auto-scaling with traffic volume, adding more of these Ingress Envoys for busier backends. We have had a bunch of learnings from implementing all of this. I found out that SIGWI for canonicalization is really complicated. Because Envoy is not using the CPP SDK, there is going to be some constant risk of implementation errors, other feature gaps that might break this platform. The most interesting bug that we found is shown on the screen here. It turns out that when you're canonicalizing a SIGWI4 request, you have to extract the query parameters and then sort them alphabetically. If you don't do that, then you have a situation where a request succeeds if the query params are sorted one way, but it fails if you move the parameters around. This was bizarre to me when I first noticed the error. At Square, we don't really require any of our internal customers to use the platform offerings. Teams are free to manage their accounts however they want. So it's critical that we build smooth paved roads. And we found that if we do that, generally users will come. We do have a way now for teams to make private internal sites on S3, and demand has been great. Finally, reusing established patterns in your organization is powerful. Because we're building on top of the service mesh, ownership boundaries, where the logs go, requesting ACL changes, all work exactly the way that teams expect them to. And so it's been really easy for folks to onboard. All right, that's all I have.
Thanks. A couple questions. First of all, you mentioned GCP as part of your landscape. Was there any consideration of building this to run in GCP or using GCP as part of this work?
We were focusing on AWS because that's where most of the demand seemed to be. Mm-hmm. We don't really have applications that are spread across both. Teams typically use the platform that makes the most sense for what they're trying to do. And so there was just more use cases on AWS at the moment.
Cool. So questions about, you noted that AWS's app mesh version of Envoy was close to working in this way, or it had a module that worked in this way. Why not use app mesh as is, or ask them to upstream their implementation? We asked our TAM whether they were planning to upstream it anytime soon. It sounded like there were some technical blockers they were working through. It just seemed easier to go it our own way. We also couldn't use their image directly because we have a bunch of custom extensions that we need to build from source. That makes sense. And I guess digging into those custom extensions, one of the things I think you touched on this early in the presentation. How do end users auth to the Ingress Envoy? You're from a service mesh. What is the experience of talking to the Envoy? Like Trogdor is somewhere in the middle there, but could you give a little bit more color on what's going on there?
Sure. So there is an internal site that users go to when they're accessing stuff that's running in production. Okay. And they're all under the same domain. I see. So from your point of view, you can't actually tell as an end user, as a Square employee, whether you're talking to a service that's fronted by Ingress Envoy versus anything else in the mesh. The experience is exactly the same.
That makes sense. Cool. And as one always asks when I see Tool Talks, any plans to open source this work or parts of it? Any ways that the community can help?
I would love to. The big question is, I don't want to duplicate effort with stuff that the App Mesh team has already done. Mm-hmm. So if I could get in touch with them and figure out if there's some way we could collaborate, that would be awesome.
Well, perhaps they will hear you. Any other questions in the room? All right. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Thank you.